Hello Richmond, just letting you know we're still waiting for a few people to come back in and then we're going to get set up. Wrong desk. That's why my wallet's not there. Glass cannon, Blake. Can't do real life. I'm a glass cannon. I can't do real life.
We'll see. I think it's going to be a tough season for them.
Yeah, they need a new wing or they need a new midfielder.
They need a lot of new things. It's going to be a tough season for them. Yeah, for sure. Might not win anything.
What will we try?
There's a reason I do. That's why. Do it like 6 times. Yeah. For the 2017 elite for you.
Good job, whoever that was.
There's like,
We're still waiting for a couple of people, Richmond.
Yeah, that shows that it is.
Get out of your way here. Said I'd get out of your way here.
No, it's alright. You're fine.
Yeah, man. Not really, but yes, I am.
So many teach me.
There's one thing I forgot this morning. My wallet.
Alley forever.
Yeah.
So when are you going?
Yeah, so I have food. The thing is, I have, guys, have no cards.
That's
No
cool.
license. And
What he was.
Yep.
You go in and you.
Yep, you do. You do. You use Angular
I
to.
really so basically, I always kind
Ah, it'll be all right, I'm sure.
change what jeans or whatever.
Especially if you make this live.
Well,
Well, I don't think there's much chance for us making this live simply because the entire video rental industry is defunct now.
From this, create an entire database.
at least I'm not gonna.
Yeah, I mean, you could you can create an entire database, but yeah, you have to have the API there. Yeah,
There's no.
if you don't have the API there, Angular can't do it. You know, so it's what's exposed on that API that we're going to be able to implement at the moment. Yeah, if you get through it. If you get through these things, then I'll happily write more bits of the API for you. You know.
So I'm thinking for my final project, I want my users to be able to
My
create
levels of energy.
Yeah.
so they're not deleting it.
I don't know. I mean, there's quite a lot of heavy lifting there. You're actually talking about them creating an entirely new database on SQL Server. Okay.
It won't be very complex.
Yeah, I think you should. Well, you're talking about one database, yeah, or many, each one having their own. Yeah, I think you should pick something else. There are all sorts of problems there, from security to connection strings. I mean, how do you? That's an application. You saw this morning. That's an application settings thing, yeah, right? Once you've got someone's created a new user, how do you get your app to look at that database? You know, I think it's probably a little too ambitious at this stage.
I'll find another way.
I'll leave whatever.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, that's what database backups are for, right? So back your database up if you're worried about it getting polluted or whatever, yeah? But typically, you wouldn't... I've seen people create databases on the fly before, but never without a whole lot of problems, yeah? What you could do is segment your database, yeah? You could segment your database so that people can only you tie each row to a user ID, yeah, and you would only let people see a subset of that, and you would only let them delete rows that belong to them, yeah. That would make it a lot easier. So every table you had that you wanted them to have some control over, yeah, you might have a user ID, and they would be the only people able to change that, yeah. So that might be an alternative, but multiple databases, I think you're biting off more than you can chew.
Yeah, it might get really weighty.
Yes. You know, and it's like you can't control the structure of those databases. You don't know whether people are going to be able to get into them. There are all sorts of problems. Right, we've got everyone back now, yeah? Apart from Ali, I think we can continue. Oh, Kathy. Just getting Kathy. Okay, gonna start continuing in a second. I'm just going to explain what we're doing first of all. Now, I understand that I've shown you a lot of stuff and you've not necessarily done a lot of stuff. That's going to change. We're going to do two things. We are together going to implement this the category API, which is here. We're going to go through and we're going to implement every single one of these things and hook it up to Angular. Yeah. Once we've done that, you guys ought to have the knowledge to do the actor stuff on your own using the examples that we've created so far. Okay. So the first thing that I would like to do is I want to show a list of categories. What is my basic component for showing stuff in Angular? What's it called? And I've already said the word. But it's more than that. It's a view. It's a little bit of code which says how to display the stuff in that view. It's got a special word, a special name in Angular, and we've already met a component. That's great. Yeah. So let's I would recommend opening up a new Git bash window or whatever it is you're using, yeah, in your Empower Angular directory, so that we can start generating some of the things that we need. Okay, so just to get everybody on the same page again, the component, the command to generate these new components. In fact, I might do it in here because all right. So I'm just going to open up and go back. You don't have to do any of this. I just created a cloned copy of this stuff so that I could check that it would work when we cloned it from Git. So I'm just changing into my Empower Angular directory. The command is ng. That's sort of shorthand for Angular. You'll see it all in the stuff there, all in the files like the ngIf and the ng4. Yeah, it means Angular. Generate component. Don't press return yet. Don't press enter yet. So it's going to show a list of categories. What would be a good name for it? What should we call it? Just categories. It'll automatically. This is an important thing about the Angular command line interface. When you're generating something like a component, it'll automatically put the component part on the end. So all we need to type in is categories, and it will create us a class called categories component. So just type categories. Whoop, correctly. And then press enter. Okay? And if you look in your project there, you'll see a brand new categories component thing. I'll get this back up. So we've got a question. No. Okay. So ng space generate space component space categories, and you should see what I've got up on my screen there. That is created these 4 files, and as you can see at the bottom, it's gone and wired our component up. If we look at that file, our app knows about the categories component right now. And it's automatically under app created a subdirectory called categories with the individual bits of our component. We're not worried too much about the test script, but that's there for testing, and we can we probably won't touch on that, but there's that same component that we've had there. And as I said before, you don't really have to wire this up. The Angular command line interface will do that for you. So if I go on to my main application component now and look at the markup, we've got the router outlet, but I just want to check that categories is okay. So what we can do is we can use its selector, which is app categories, and just put that in there. So, and then I'm going to go and ng serve my app when I'm done. I'll get back to this in a second.
and do that then.
We're not going to keep this here permanently.
Go ahead and open that up then.
What? Which one?
The NG, what you just opened.
NG serve.
Yeah.
Okay, we're still.
Do we do that? Go ahead and do that.
Yeah. So if you scroll right to the bottom of your screen, I should have put that above there actually. Do you know what? I think I might, because I don't want to scroll every time I'm. So I'm just going to change that, and because once you've NG served, any changes will automatically be recompiled. You've got to save the file. That's crucial. Doesn't know about unsaved files.
What is that selector syntax? What magic is going on there?
Right. So we've already covered this a little bit, but seeing as Ali is at the bottom of the class right now, I'll explain it again for his benefit. Okay. When we created the component, and we've got this in greater detail later on. There's a component declaration in the TypeScript file. It says selector app categories, yeah? And because we put that thing on there, it says, oh, I need to fill this little box with something called app categories. I know that I have to do that because there's a component that says I use app categories.
That's where all of our output gets rendered.
And the Angular CLI, when you do an ng generate component, it'll always create a little categories works thing for you just to let you know that, yep, you've got the component there and it's being replaced. But that's not going to be a great deal of use to us in the present state. We probably don't want categories on this ourselves. What we probably want, we probably don't want to keep categories there. We'd probably like for it to have its own navigational link up here. So our main layout page, which is the equivalent of layout CSHTML and a MVC thing, has got these in there. So what I'm going to do, because we haven't done actors yet, I'm going to change actors to categories in index.html. Remember that this is our layout file, yeah? This governs what the overall site looks like, and it also contains our navigation for right now. Whilst I'm here, I'm going to give films its link, and I'm going to say that categories can be referenced by a link called categories. More than that, I'm going to change href to router link. Router link is special Angular syntax, and it comes in handier later on. I'm going to leave the categories one for now. So, question, if I click that new link that I've got up there now, see? Is that going to work for me? No. And why not?
We only added the
Fantastic. That is excellent answer. I love it. I loved it in stereo as well, getting it all around the class. We haven't created a route for categories yet. We haven't told categories what happens. We haven't told the app what we do when someone hits categories. So what we want to do is we want to go into our app routing file. So it's the app routing module. I'm just going to take this off for a sec, just so I've got a little bit more space to play with. And can we put the route in now? Could I just go and put in a route like this? So, hey, let's go. I've got this new thing called categories. I'm going to put a route in right now. It's going to become obvious in a second, and I think the answer will become obvious as well. Nice. Right, this is why Visual Studio Code is so lovely, yeah? You start typing it, it says, oh, I think you want categories component. And you think, well, I do actually. And if you click that, it's all sorted out. But yeah, you were completely right. If I hadn't have clicked that and imported that, routing would have known nothing about categories. So we would have got, and I can show you this now. If I just uncomment that line, you don't have that line. We have the squiggle of incompetence nestling underneath categories component there. Bring it back in. We're good. We know about it now. And this is, again, a huge benefit of TypeScript, where JavaScript would have probably said, yeah, that's fine, you've just introduced a new variable, I don't know what it is, I'll set it to nothing, it won't do anything, but yep, you're good to go. So TypeScript and Angular together provides you a little bit of insulation. You'll catch this stuff at compile time, or before you go to run. So, if everyone's got their routing, we'll go back to the component and we'll add some more things to it. Now, we talked earlier about what components do. What are they specifically for? I mean, no matter what it is, every component is the same in this respect, yeah? It's there to do a certain function.
Components are there to create views.
Yeah.
Supported and referenced by services.
Okay, great. Scott's just answered. Components are there just really to control what goes on the screen, yeah? And they are fed by services.
Services in particular are functions or things that affect the component but not the view. So it's other code that won't have any effect on the view.
Yeah, that's fair. Services are stuff that won't have any direct effect on the view at all. We're going to use them to get stuff, but then we've got to use the component to get their results, to put them on there. So if Scott says we need a service, what do we need? Yeah. And again, we go back to the place where we're adding our stuff with ng generate, and again, service is a concept that's so baked into Angular. I'm going to make this bigger actually, because so baked into Angular that the Angular CLI has got a command just for it, and it's the same sort of thing. ng generate service, just category I'm going to call this. Again, the Angular CLI will sort everything else out for us. The actual class that gets created will be called category service. It will have the right capitalization. It will be marked as injectable so that we can put it into our other things. So yeah, ng generate service category. It takes all the heavy lifting out of what we want to do. And it creates two files for us, the unit test files, which we're not looking at the moment, and a category.service, which is what we're going to use to feed our component. So I know that category service doesn't do anything right now, and if we look at it, it's you know, it's not doing much, but there is something that it is already by default. It's injectable. We can inject this into our component using constructor injection. We'll do that in a. We'll flesh this service out in a little bit, but for right now, let's work on getting our category service into our component. So, constructor injection means this has got to come in from where? Here. We don't have to create private read-onlys above this anymore like we did in C#. What can we do here that will give us a private variable straight away? Yep. Private. Category service. And again, if we use the .NET, the Visual Studio Code goodness, you can select it straight away and it will wire it in for us. So that's great. We've got a component and we've got a service. Those are the two basic things. Nothing's doing anything yet, but we've got a nice little placeholder. This is where we will set our component up every time. Oh, hang on. Yep. I am in the right file. This is where we set our component up. This will run every time the component is selected. Right, I'm going to jump back over the category service right now. Now, if we look at our Swagger, the methods kind of suggest themselves really. Yeah, here's category. Oh, I want to hide this. So we've got a list method, a create method, a delete method, a get method, and an update method. So this component is going to do a list of categories. So what one are we going to use out of all of those API methods? Hang on, let me just refresh this so they're nice and flattened. Which API method are we going to use to populate our component? Yeah, we've got two gets, so you're going to have to help me out, be a bit more specific. Are we going to use get ID or are we going to use list? Yeah. That's cool. Right. And all we have to do to run this is just call localhost API category list page. I mean, look, let me see if I can run that just on its own with nothing else so you can see what it's doing. I mean, we can do it here. If I try that out, I can execute it, and then underneath that you'll see that we've got all of these categories, and that is what Angular will be receiving, this nice JSON structured document from the API which gives it a list of categories with all of the information in them. But we can also, I think we can also do, yeah, I'm just going to try this. Whack that into a new tab and we'll see if we can get it raw. Yes, Moo, I know I've taken an extra character. I will be deleting it on the next bit, you eagle-eyed person, you. That's what it looks like raw. That's feeding our, that will be feeding our service. Now, I've used in my app here a little bit of inheritance in my film service, and I'll tell you why now, okay? we're gonna be hitting the same server all the time, right? We have to have this API host here, yeah? I really don't want to have to define that in every single service that I've written. So what I've done is I've created a really simple web API service, and all it does is says, right, okay, this is the API host, yeah? And every time you send something, I want you to make sure you send it in JSON. So that's where that complexity is handled, and the only reason I've handled it there is because we need it for every single service we've got. We're always going to the same API host, we're always going to want to send JSON. That's all this little service, all this thing does. So when I look at film service, I get API host for free, yeah? I get headers for free, yeah? Whenever I want to call them. So we're going to do a similar thing with the category service. We're going to get it to extend, i.e. inherit from, the web API service. And this is now moaning because we need to tell the web API service, we need to give the web API service something that it can use to call, to make HTTP calls. Now this is, again, this is injected, this is in the film service there. We're just going to do the same thing there. If I use the Magic Visual Studio Code, I can just say, oh, I think this is the one we need. Yep. And the way that you send stuff up to a base class in TypeScript is different from it is in C#. In C# would be doing something like this, base HTTP. Now that doesn't work, right? Instead, in the constructor, you've got to call a super method, which just says, look, run the constructor of the thing above me. And as soon as we've done that, we've given Web API Service everything that it needs. So remember, super calls the constructor of the parent class. We're going to have to do this in every single service we define that calls that API. But we're getting a lot of stuff for free that we would have to have done everywhere if we'd not have done that. So those are one of those calls. It's one of those calls that you have to make as a coder and think, where's my effort best spent? And that's fairly cheap cost of business, really. So we're going to define a method now called list. It's going to take a page, and that's going to be of type. What type is that going to be of?
Number.
Yep, number. Oh. Now TypeScript's a bit weird, right, in that you can specify an explicit return type, but much like JavaScript, you don't have to. You can return from anything, whether it's got a return type or not. So if we have a look at our film servicing, it's going to be pretty apparent what we need to do to get a list up. So I'm just going to leave that list method as is for now, and we'll see what the other one's doing. So it looks like we're setting the location of where the API service can be found. We're also using string interpolation, which means we can put our variables directly in us. into our string, but it only works with a certain type of string quote. What type of quote do we need for string interpolation in TypeScript? Backticks, yep. And that's pretty cool actually, because that convention is followed in other places as well, like I think in Linux scripts and stuff like that. Backticks means do something special with the stuff that's inside me. Normally execute, isn't it? In Linux. It's been a long time. Okay. So, and we need backticks to do that. What other strategy? If we didn't want to do that, what could we do if we didn't want to do it? What's the other way to combine strings together? Concatenation. Yeah, we could use concatenation if we wanted to, but I think if you've got string interpolation available to you, I think it looks a lot tidier than concatenation, you know, and a lot more readable. So we're setting where the resource can be found, and then we're using the HTTP client to visit the web page. Whoop. To visit that resource. That will do the job of that's just like us hitting a website, you know, or going to a link in a browser or something like that, except it's doing it automatically and behind the scenes. It's the same as what I just did over there. Yep. Just said, right, okay, give me the data. I want the data. And that's what it'll get back. But it's doing it on our behalf. We don't have to go over there and grab it. It will do this. So let's break this down. This refers to the member variable, okay? Or this refers to this class. You have to, if you want to call a member variable in TypeScript, you have to use this. You have to use it. It is a mandatory rule.
It's not this class. It's more technically. It's the instance.
The instance. Yeah, sorry, you're right. It's the instance of the class. So if I just try calling HTTP here, no, TypeScript's very strict about stuff like that. But then it was designed to be very strict from the start, from the ground up. So I'll just make a note here. Whoop. If we want to access member variables, we have to prefix them with this, which is a shorthand to the current class, our current object instantiation. So on the next line now, I'm going to break this up, and I don't like doing this, but we're using get. And that is just making a get call. You know, you've done your HTTP verbs, yeah? You've gone through and you know that there's get, there's post, there's put, there's patch, there's delete, yeah? We're just using the get verb to access this resource, okay? We're telling it what URL to use, and we're telling it what headers to use. And if we go back to our web API service, the headers are just telling that, just saying, look, we want to use JSON, okay? We're communicating with JSON. But that's it. It's effectively a two-liner, right? The only other thing that we've got to look at is we're returning something called film results. Now, we're not going to be able to use those in film results. We're actually going to need a couple of things to store our category. So what classes do you think we need to add to our solution to get our category list out? Yep, category and well, we've already got film results, but we don't have. We need category results, really. Something which is going to store a bunch of categories. And again, we can use ng generate to take away the heavy lifting. So I'll just don't go too fast on this one because I want to demonstrate something else at the same time. So we're going to type ng generate class space, and this is where I'm putting all of my classes, models, and then I'm going to give it another subdirectory called category, and then I'm going to call the class category. And again, all of the capitalization will be handled for us. So ng generate class models / category / category. It's going to be a class called category and a subdirectory called category. And if we open up the app now, and I'll switch back to this, you'll see that we've got a nice new category subdirectory for all category related classes, and we've got a nice new class called category. We've not got anything in it at the moment, but we can soon change that. So the other thing we needed was category results, and again, I'm just going to put it in the same place because they're really tightly together. But in Angular, if you want to separate two words and have them capitalized properly, you use the best named naming convention in the world. Okay, do you know what that's called with the hyphen stuff? Do you know, Ali? I bring you kebab syntax. So called because it's like a skewer going through, and that is a legit thing. It's called kebab syntax. It's the best syntax in the world. Yeah. So yeah, we use kebab syntax when using ng generate, and that will work out from the kebab syntax that we want to break it there. That is search.
That's real?
It's real. It's real. It's kebab syntax. Which is quite amusing because in England, when people are buying a kebab, they don't normally have much syntax. Like, oh, let me a kebab! Incapable of saying consonants. So now we go back to our stuff there, and in that we can now see that we've got a nice named class here. It's got the kebab syntax here and stuff like that. All quite happy. What we want in this, and this is something we may consider creating a base class for later, but pretty much the same structure as the film results. Oh, hang on, I'm in the wrong subdirectory here. So very simple. We want it to contain something called items, which will be a list of film, and we want to a list of the thing we want, and we'll be setting it to an empty list. And we'll be doing total items as well. This is the total what would this be a candidate for? I'll do the other one first. So again, right? We want items, which are going to be of type category array. And all you have to do in TypeScript to say something is an array, pretty much same thing, square brackets, and then we're going to set that to an empty array. Why would I set that to? Oh, it's moaning about me not having the reference. So just like in normal VS, you can use Control-T, and it'll Control-Dot, and it will suss out stuff for you. Those actually refer to the same file. I'm going to use the shorthand one and explain why this works. What does dot mean when in a directory path? Great. How would I go up a directory? Excellent. How would I go up two directories? Yeah, it's // Okay, that's fantastic. So that's quite happy now. Total items. What was it going to be again? Yeah. I was going to go for a boolean there. You've saved me from shame.
You said the dot means up.
dot dot means up. Dot, just one dot on its own means the current directory. Okay, and I suppose once we've done that, we actually need to give category some internals. So what do all of our what properties do we need? Come on, I want them. You know what? And you can cheat. I don't care. Go look at your database. Tell me what we need to include here. Right? If we want to model a category in TypeScript, what properties do we need to have to model a category fully? There's only, I think, 3 of them. ID. And that's going to be a number. I'm not going to ask a question anymore. I think we've got that. What's the other thing? What are the other 2 things? Okay, good. And that's going to be what?
String.
Excellent. And what's the other column we need?
Probably updated.
Yep. Date. Okay. Now, I am actually going to include an extra property on here. Okay. But this is not really for what we're doing. Actually, no, I'll leave that till later. We'll come back to that. I don't want to confuse anything more than we are right now. Alright, so that's it. We've got a category. We've got a category result. We've got a nice little place to store everything that we're going to get back from the service, including the number of categories that we've got back. It's time to head back to our component. So, I like to keep things consistent, right? So I'm going to call my stuff results everywhere, okay? You could do something else, but, you know, it's crazy really, isn't it? You know? So, my results are going to be of type category results. Or category, oh. That's fine. I should probably change that. But hey, never mind. And it's just going to be a new category result.
Say let or var there. It just kind of, that's the first time you're talking about it, it just gives you a new one?
Yeah, this is a member variable. Ali asked why we're not using let or var, yeah? This is a member variable of a class. You don't have to use let or var there. Let or var tends to be for inside methods. And again, the other, we don't really use var. What do we use instead of let sometimes? Const, yeah. And what happens when we use one of those?
It stays constant throughout the entire class.
Well, it's not necessarily the entire class, because you can. Scott said that it sort of, yeah.
It only gets used that once.
Yeah, you can only set it once, and then that's it. Nothing else can set it afterwards. So let is for a read-only variable inside a function. Const is for something else. I think const you can use here. If you don't specify an access modifier, you're implicitly public. This and this are the same. Okay? But because it's 10, I mean, you can do that if you want, but I tend not to. I just go with the flow. It tends to be a much more concise language, TypeScript, and not, you know, this is essentially the convention I've seen all over the place. Okay, so we've got results now. They're empty. They're not getting populated, but we've got results. So what we want to do now is bring the results in using the service. And we're going to take this bit by bit because you're going to use this again and again. So this category service list. I'm just going to go with page 1 for now. I don't think we've got enough stuff to do more than one page anyway. So call the method. Okay. And remember, it's asynchronous, so we're not going to wait around for it to finish. We're going to do something with the results when they come back. And to do that, we use subscribe. I'll let you know this time, yeah? But we're saying subscribe, which means I'm interested in the result of this call. And then it uses a bit of lambda syntax to say, okay, so I'm just going to use that. It's probably worth breaking this down just a bit. Oh, what's going on there? And it's moaning a little bit right now because we haven't defined our service. Or maybe we should do that first. Right, so just like the film service, we've defined our stuffs here. So we want to, what's our HTTP verb that we need to access the API thing? Someone open their Swagger up and let me know, please. Yeah, but what's the verb we're going to use? Excellent. Okay, so we need to set up the URL where we are going to get our results from. Now the other one we did use let, but we could easily use const here. It's not a problem, okay? Because we're not going to change it. Once we've set it here, we're not going to change it until the end of this block ever again. And that's fine, because when we run it again, it'll be newed up again. So we're going to create a const URL, backticks, and then we can start using the API host, the name of the API service we're calling, and just as a reminder, I think yeah. API, so it's category. So if you look at API host, I've hang on, sorry. In this thing here, I've already included the API bit on the end, yeah? So all we need to do is put in the category part and then the method that we want. So it's category list. And then page. Realistically though, all of our category service is always going to be calling that calling the category sub-hierarchy of the API. So we don't really want to repeat ourselves, do we? No. So let's define it up here. That's actually, you can't use a const up there. Okay, so service, I'm going to call it service URL, and it's going to be a category, and then we can check, we can use string interpolation there as well. And I don't think I'll get too many arguments if I say that's best practice. You don't repeat yourself. We might want to change our URLs. We might want to change where things live later on. And if they all move to the same place, we only have to change our program in a couple of places. If we'd have put in those URLs ourselves, we'd be on a copy and paste job, which introduces its own risks. So that's it. We know where we're getting our stuff from now. We're just going to be hitting a web link just as we did over here with that data that we're getting back from there. And that's all we're doing. We're making the same call that we just made in that browser with the API. But we need to do it, and we need to actually get on and do that. And the thing that does that is our little HTTP client. And we, like I say, we're using get. We actually want to specify that we know what sort of thing we're going to get back. And in this case, it's going to be category result. And then all we have to tell it is where we're getting that information from, which we've just defined, and what headers to use, which we defined in the base class. And now I suppose we better return it as well. And I need to check my stuff to see what I've got messed up here. Okay, yep. Yeah, never code blind, Paul, never code blind. So go back there. This just needs to, the headers needs to be inside brackets. And that's your service method. That will actually get us a list of those categories. I'm going to break it down a little bit so it's easier to read, or get rid of the Explorer for a sec.
So category result.
What's that? Category result, because we're getting a list of items plus we're getting the total items that are there. Okay? So it's nice and simple. Look how tiny that method is. You know, it takes in a page number, goes to an address, tells it, and the headers thing just expresses what format we want to speak in. We want to speak in JSON. Yes, Ali?
Why don't you have to specify the return type of the list now?
Because it's implied through the return type of it's not necessary that you do that. In TypeScript, you can specify an explicit return type, but you can still return out of anywhere, like you can in JavaScript. So, yeah, that's probably something they might get rid of soon. Yes, Scott?
I'm confused about the headers part.
Okay. It's every web request you send, yeah, whether you know it or not, you send across the way that you're communicating, yeah, and the way you want to communicate with, yeah. I suppose the default would be text/HTML, yeah.
Pull up Chrome's DevTools, it'll show you the raw headers that are sent.
Yeah. What tab's that on? Yeah.
You have to do something
No, that's right. I think what I might do is just go to a normal website.
along with all of the web requests. And you have to set them because it tells you things, tells the other side like what browser client or what clients type them on, what type of response type will I accept.
Yep. And the other thing is, look at the content type there. That's what we're setting. It's basically we're expressing what language we'd like to speak. Yeah. In the same way as, you know, you get on a telephone and say hello, and they'll automatically work out you want to speak English. Well, web browsers aren't that smart. You have to tell them that you would like to speak in JSON, or you want to speak in HTML, or you want to speak in just plain text. So you can do that by expressing headers, and because the default is, I think, text HTML, yeah, we have to tell it explicitly that we want to speak in JSON for these calls. Yeah. So that's what headers are.
Where do you know what to pass it?
There's an entire list of types which are defined on, I think it's an RFC, request for change. But if you can find them on the internet, say, look, I want to pass JSON. It's normally a two-part sort of thing, sort of either you'll see a lot of text / HTML, or image / PNG, or, you know, binary. There's loads of them out there. You can look them up on the internet. You don't have to remember all of them all the time. I certainly don't. So. Category component.ts. We're going back to that anyway, I think. So, because I don't think any of us would be working right now.
Yeah, I still got the subscribe.
Right. So that's what subscribe should look like, and I think mine's working okay. Yeah, go back to your. Have you made changes in your category service?
Not save them.
Okay, save them. Then, you know, it's got to know about them.
Okay.
Save your category service if you're getting squiggly lines. It just means it thinks you're returning nothing at the moment, but. Save all of those files, please. All of them. Yeah. Look, these ones up here, you can tell that they've not been saved.
Could you please go back to category search?
Yep. Okay.
Could you please go back to category search? I still got the issue.
Are you returning?
Oh, no, I hear that.
If something says it won't accept void, it means you're not returning anything. This little engine is smart enough to go through the functions and work out what the return types are based on your code. So that's all that's happening there. Hello.
Hi, could we import the service URL at the top of this?
What?
Is my so service URL is not being recognized for me. We put up the service URL at the top under.
So have you got that, Melissa?
Oh, I have it.
Save all your files.
And remember that every variable that you want to access has to be every member variable, something that belongs to the class. You have to, or a parent, you have to use this in front of it. Otherwise, it will not recognize it. TypeScript is strict, yo. So again, breaking this down, subscribe says we're interested in the results when they come in. And the contents of subscribe is this, by the top, when you are here, the results are back. So when you are inside subscribe, the results, the results are ready. You can access the results, but you can create a shorthand for the results with a lambda expression. You can then assign that to your local component. I'm just checking that I'm still compiling successfully. Okay.
Can you go back to film service? Or category service?
Sure. So we're using the HTTP, the injected HTTP service or HTTP client to fire a GET request at the specified URL. Specifying that the return type.
They want you to give them your code.
No.
We have 20 minutes before lunch.
Okay. Well, let's get ourselves fixed up on everyone's TypeScript, and then we can do the visual side of it after lunch. And then I think they've got enough to be moving. Who's got problems? Come on. You can't have as many problems as me.
Actually, don't do it yourself. I want you to trust me. Let's docents and I actually do our jobs.
Yeah, but I'm not going to fix them both of them. I'm going to make my suggestions so they can fix themselves. Okay. All right. Cool. All right.
Yeah, does it run? Do we have a working thing right now?
Mine's running. Yeah. Yeah. No, you're not going to get any of my code. I did 11 hours coding yesterday. You've got that code. You're not having any more. Okay. You're coding yourselves. That's what you're here to do. That's what you're here to learn. But then we'll get you there. Come on.
Yeah. Are you running right now?
Well, I've not got. Yeah. We've not done the view, have we? So it's not like. Right. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna code up my markup now. It's going to be remarkably similar to the stuff we've already done. I'm just going to close these down. So, yes, I want to make the changes. Probably. It's going to be remarkably similar to the other one that I've done. So if we just have a quick swish at that. We're going to have an ng4 at the top. We're going to have an ng4 list of category of results items, because we called it the same thing for consistency. So as you know what, I'm just going to be a filthy beggar and nick it. and then change one thing so that I can get this doing quickly. Alright, categories works. Not for long because I'm going to put in some. Alright, we'll see if the app's still working. Wow. Well, I'm compiled successfully, but I want to do something else with this anyway. I don't want it on the front page. Anymore, so I'm going to take it out of my app component HTML. We only really put that there so we could demonstrate it being there, but we've got it routing now. So
You took off some stuff.
yeah, because we routed it. The next thing I'm going to do is see if the app is actually working. I might actually stop it and restart it, see what it does. Actually, let's have a quick look. I'm just. It doesn't look happy. So I'm just going to stop this. Oh, it's, yep. Close these down. And do an ng serve again. You don't have to do this. I just need to get my stuff straight.
Just while he's doing that, I wanted to reiterate how you learn how to code. We've repeated this in every language we've covered. What's the best way to learn how to code?
Repetition.
Write your own code.
Yep.
Is that going to go well the first 2 or 3 times you do it?
No.
Absolutely not.
You're going to get a lot of errors.
That pain is why you remember it next time though. So you have a working example. What's the working example of Angular all the way through? Before he even started 2 hours ago doing this. What's the working example you've got? No. In this app. Films. You've got films all the way through. So I actually told him, don't give him any more code. After like 10:30, and he said, no, they really need to see. And I agree.
Put me in a headlock
no more
and
code.
did that to me and said no more code. So no, seriously, you can't have
I
it.
think you all are being spoiled by, okay, we're going to go and we're just going to type what he's typing and we'll try to keep up and then we'll get his code after.
Nope.
You're not learning a thing. You have to make your own mistakes. So you now have one full spike that works. He's walked you through a second full spike, which is exactly the same thing in a different context. You need to do it yourself.
There we are. Okay. I'll help you get your apps working in the next before we go to lunch, yeah? But after that, yeah?
Since we have a little bit of time, could you show the visual and then
It's up there. The
it's in private Slack. Pull up that.
oh yeah, this one here.
No.
I don't know. Alright, okay.
X in the top right.
This here.
Top right.
There you go. Explain Angular in the context of the stack.
Me. So, okay.
He's never seen this diagram.
The top of this diagram is really the bottom of the stack, yeah? This is where stuff is persisted. It's like the equivalent of your hard drive on a computer. This is where it's all going. This is the physical, yeah? Speaking to the database, you have server-side applications that run on a server. They are loads of different technologies that are there, yeah? And that is how most web pages used to run. Like you would, every time you wanted a new page, you'd be making a server request and it would be going off there, reloading the whole page, giving you the complete page. But we've long had a situation where that wasn't good enough and we wanted to have more responsive user interfaces, update only certain parts of a user interface at a time. It's exactly how Facebook works, you know. It's not updating the whole page, you know. Compare Facebook and the way that works, yeah, to you know, a site that doesn't have that, and you're pressing F5 all the time to get like the latest version of the page, yeah. This is the whole idea of having things like Angular is to build more responsive web applications that are more engaging to your users, yeah. And this Angular sits on this part of the stack, right down here. So it doesn't speak to databases directly. It speaks to websites that are served.
Why do you have to say localhost 4200? That seems like it's a server-side technology.
Right, I don't know. I don't know. I think no. We are actually setting up our own web server as well, because it's a combination of Node and Angular. That's the answer, isn't it? We're using a small web server to get things running, and then Angular sits on top of that. Can you tell them the correct answer, please?
Well, no, you got everything right, but it's a little bit more complicated than that, because he's saying, well, the web server, what's the technology we're using for the application server tier here? In his example, the one that's working with the categories and everything against Tequila, what's the web server technology we're using? No. C#. C#, ASP.MVC. That's the little swagger thing. That's why I wanted this to come up. So C#, and he's exposing all the data through JSON calls. It's just a C# app that he's not using any of the user interface for. Okay? So that's why we have two repositories. One of the repositories is nothing more than a C# server-side app that talks to the database and serves JSON. Why do we do that? For our second app. Remember, Angular is front end. That's why it's written down here. But see, I drew it up near the top of the web user interface because it doesn't just sit in the web user interface. Why not? Does TypeScript work in the browser? No. No, it does not. And that is why you have to have something on the server that makes your it transpiles your TypeScript into JavaScript, and it gives it to the browser. And the browser reads the JavaScript, and then that's why this is so complicated. It's not you, it's Angular. I'm sorry. But Angular is complicated. Because you have this TypeScript that's transpiled on the server to JavaScript. You download to the browser, and then it talks to some other URL to actually get its data. So in the context of this example, what are the pieces? Can somebody walk through where all the pieces are? What are the ports we're using? An example, a spike. I just want to make sure you all understand the architecture here. Go ahead, Melissa.
Okay, so when we start the application in port 4200 or wherever we are on the web user interface in our bottom right-hand corner, Angular has already, at this point, rendered our JavaScript to read it. That JavaScript was originally in TypeScript, which is being run on the server side of the application, where our data is being called through an API from our other application, which was calling to our database using C#.
That's right, but you laid it all out there absolutely correctly, but it's so complicated to understand. So visually, the first thing, the 4200, let's theoretically do this. The 4200, it's kind of like Bootstrap. It's kind of like a CDN for Bootstrap. You're downloading a bunch of CSS and JavaScript. Think of your Angular app is kind of like that. It's been transpiled, it's done. So as long as you can download the file to the browser, you're done. From then on, you're in the browser. So that's how you get that little hard-coded, well, dynamic in TypeScript. By the time it gets to the browser, it's going to be a string that says, what is my C# API? And that's the problem Emma was having. It was talking to her C# app at a port that the C# app on a Mac decided to be hosted somewhere else. So it says, there's nothing there, I got an error, no data. That's why this is so complicated. In order to figure out your own problems and not want the code posted to GitHub so you can download it, you have to understand all the pieces and understand what you're writing. Otherwise, you're going to be lost. So step one is, exactly as Melissa pointed out, you've got this TypeScript thing that gets transpiled to JavaScript, exposed as a big blob of JavaScript, an app that runs in the browser as pure JavaScript. That gets downloaded to the browser. In the browser, it has a very simple HTML page that says, oh, this router callout. It's really a big JavaScript application. The JavaScript application gets its data from where? And where is it calling that from?
It gets it from the application layer, and it calls it using the API.
Those calls are being made from what tier? When it goes and says, give me a list of categories.
From the server. Call it from the application layer, the second tier.
No.
From the last two?
It's from the browser. That's where the complication comes in. Remember that the Angular app has been downloaded and it runs inside of Chrome, in our case.
So
and it's making a call back to a server URL.
So it's downloaded a JSON file.
JavaScript. It's a JavaScript app, yeah.
JavaScript app, okay.
And then when it makes the call, it's calling back up to another server-side app. That's, in this case, what is that other server-side app that gives us our data? C#, ASP.MVC. But the whole purpose of the ASP.MVC is to give the data to the Angular app. But really, you're going from the server side down to the browser, and the browser is making a call not to the same app, but to a different app on a different server, perhaps. And then it's all normal ASP.MVC. It's like, okay, you made a request on this route, and we know how to do that. We spent several days doing that. And it goes and it talks with Hibernate, and then Hibernate talks to the database all the way back. So this is not only a full-stack app, this is a full-stack app with a client framework on the front end. This is about as complicated as it gets in modern web technology. So, you know, like I said in your interviews, water for ducks back sometimes. But I'm trying to put the big pieces together, which is why I asked him to put this up on the board. This is how it's all working. And if you don't understand how the pieces are working together, it's really hard to get the syntax right, because you're not even understanding what it's doing.
And I honestly don't mind telling you that when I first started learning about Angular, I had no idea where it's at exactly on that stack, and that's common, you know. There are loads of things that I didn't know about, and this is going to be your experience whenever any new technology comes up. I know people that are learning Elixir right now, not in this company, but over in England. They've never seen it before. It's confusing the hell out of them. They don't know what's going on, but they will eventually get it because they've gone through those challenges before. But if you know where it sits within these stacks, you're much better. You're better prepared to do that sort of thing. But yeah, that's what we're doing, and it results in this. And like, you don't, you know, the other thing is you don't actually have to be full stack, right? A lot of the time, there are application developers out there that just use existing APIs. They consume them, yeah, with stuff like Angular and show them. There are public APIs that we could call with Angular almost immediately and start getting stuff back and building things, you know. Most do have their own API that you can call upon. So this is a part of it. It's really important. I think in a real professional environment, you might not even be doing all of the stack yourself, you know. If you've got enough people who are specialists in each part, you might. I've worked with people called front-end developers, and they do this. This is front-end development right here, yeah. But I like to know most of it anyway, because this is a lot sexier than all of the database stuff and that, you know. It's more fun to do. So that's all right. I'll have had some myself then.
Actually, before we go to lunch, I wanted to say, no, we're not going to give you the code for what he just walked you through.
Nope.
If you couldn't keep up, the whole point of that was to understand these are the steps to go through to create another feature branch in an Angular app. We don't have to share that code because he already gave you the films, and it's identical. So the task after lunch is going to be, no, we're not going to give you the code, but you're going to be able to fix the code if it's not working right now for you, if you weren't able to keep up, by looking at your films, because you have a working copy that's almost identical. Change the names and work it out. And when it fails, when you have problems, call us over. We're going to get it working for you. We're just not going to give you the code.
Awesome.
Wow, you love it. Nice.
We good for lunch?
Yep, I think so. Going to cut the stream off. We're going to be back in, what, 1 o'clock, yeah? Aim for that? Ish. It's always ish, isn't it?